We're holding Bez Hashem Simon Mem Zion in haGuela. And he starts like this. He's talking about the Zionists who want to convince everybody that the Torah is behind this war, the religious Zionists. So they want to load all their sheker into the Torah and make it look like the Torah is saying it. And they bring a source from a Torah source. From the words of the Poskim we speak about the obligation to save lives. Okay, so this, what he's referring to is the sugya in Erevin Memhei and also brought in Shulchan Aruch. I think I have it here, just a second. These two. Take a look. Erevin Daf Memhei Amud Aleph. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Nachrim Shetzaru Al Ayaros Yisrael.
Sorry, where is it?
What? It's I'm sorry. It's like
it starts all on. Starts all on the line.
Okay, Satmar.
Right after that.
Down Amar Rav Yehuda.
Yes.
Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Nachrim Shetzaru Al Ayaros Yisrael. If non-Jews besiege Jewish cities, Ein Yotzim Aleim Biklei Zainon. You're not allowed to go out on Shabbos. It's talking on Shabbos here. You're not allowed to go out on Shabbos and fight with weapons. The Ein Mechalin Alein is Shabbos. You're not allowed to violate Shabbos. Tani Nami Hachi, we learned in the Brisa also. Nachrim Shetzaru, Goyim besiege the cities. You don't go out, says V'chulu, it means you don't go out and fight on Shabbos. But when is that said? Kishabo al Iskei Mammon, when they came to demand money. They're not coming to kill anybody. But if the Goyim are coming to kill Jews, so now it's Pikuch Nefesh and you're allowed to fight on Shabbos. So you go out with the weapons, you violate Shabbos. If your city that they're besieging is a city next to the border, even if they don't come to kill, all they're coming to do is steal. And steal even straw, right? Even to steal straw. You're allowed to go out with weapons. You're allowed to violate Shabbos. A little further. Omer Rav Yosef Bar Menyumi, Omer Rav Nachman, Bavel Ke'ir Hasmucha L'Saper Damya. That Bavel, the Jewish community of Bavel, they all live together in one area. That's like a city on the border. So if they attack Bavel, they attack the Babylonian community, Jews will go out and fight a war on Shabbos. The Targuma Naharda, and we explained that he meant not the whole Bavel, he only meant the city of Naharda, which is by the border.
Targuma means to like Targum?
Yeah, but in the Gemara it means like they explained it. They explained this statement of the of Nachman that it refers to Naharda. Okay, so now look in next page, which is Orchaim Shin Chaf Tes Sif Hey Sif Bav. Kusim Shetzaru Al Ayaris Yisrael. It's the same thing as the Gemara. Kusim, it just uses Kusim as a replacement for Goyim. It means Goyim. Goyim who besiege Jewish cities, in Baal Iskei Mammon, if they come for money, Ein Mechal Im Leis Shabbos. Baal Iskei Nefashos, they come to kill. Afilu Stam, even if they come for no particular reason, we don't know why they're coming, then they might come to kill. So Yotzim Aleim B'Klei Zayin, Mechal Leis Shabbos. Uve'ir Asmucha L'Saper, if it's a city by the border, Afilu Loi Bo Elo Al Iskei Teven V'Kash, even if they're only coming for to steal straw, Mechal Leis Shabbos. You're allowed to violate Shabbos to go out. And there's a Ramah here, Haga, a comment of the Ramah. Even if they didn't come yet, but they're about to come, you're allowed to launch a preemptive attack. Oh, so the Zionists look, see, here's our source, right? We're allowed to make a preemptive attack to stop the Goyim from coming to steal straw. What's happening? The Egyptians are coming to what? What are they coming to steal? The water, rite of passage of the water, whatever. So this is what they saw. They see this Shulchan Aruch, and they say, look, we have a heter, we have a source to start a war. All right, so now let's see what the Rebbe responds to that. I don't even want to go into their words and debate with them. And to go slug them up. Ki ein lahem shachar, because really they have no beginning. Their words. There's nothing true about their words at all. Klal. Umeikar dadina pircha. The whole thing doesn't make sense from the start. Why? He says ve'ayal el adas. Would anybody think the imyesh mitzias ba'olam lahishtadel ba'atzalis Yisrael ve'eza oifen, if there would be some other way to save Jews besides fighting a war? Ve'etza, there's some other idea shehi shaloy al yidei milchama, that's not the option of war. Ulehinatzal mishfichus demei Yisrael, and to save Jewish lives from going into battle. V'shaloy lahachnis es kol Yisrael b'sakon, not put all the Jews in danger, even the civilians. Baruch shelo yala al das shum poisik lahatir es milchama. No poisik would even think of permitting a war. Mikol shekein l'chayav leisa, and for sure no one would obligate Jews to go into war. So this whole situation that's described in Shulchan Aruch is only talking about a case where you have no other option. You see they're coming and there's nothing to do. You can't negotiate with them. There's no other countries involved. There's no U.S., there's no UN, there's nothing, right? But here, if there's some way out of the war, you got to do it. You got to do it. Interesting, we mentioned when we were doing the Sugya Shiur, we mentioned by this is talking about the Arab-Israeli wars, the wars from other countries fighting against the state of Israel. But in the case of the Palestinians demanding land, or returning the territories for peace, that whole thing in the 80s, when that came up for the first time, there was debate about this issue, and some of the people raised this Shulchan Aruch also then. And then I showed you that Rebbe Yosef and Rav Shach both say the same thing. It's interesting. They both say the same thing independently, that giving back land is allowed, and we don't say this Shulchan Aruch applies. They say give back the land. Why? Because they say this is only when the Goyim are coming to steal straw or whatever, steal something from the Jews. Steal land, let's say. But in the case of the Palestinians, they're not coming to steal land. They're coming to take back what we stole from them. So the whole din doesn't apply. Because the whole din is because if they steal this, they steal straw, then it's likely that after that they're going to go on to kill Jews, right? So we're allowed to fight for the straw or for anything because we don't want them to end up having a foothold in the land to go kill Jews. But here, if they're coming just to get back what was stolen from them, then you're allowed to give it back. You should give it back. So interesting how Rav Shach and Rav Ovadia both took this Shulchan Aruch and also pushed it away, so that it's not a right to the Zionist wars. So why didn't the Rebbe use their Tanya over here? Why did he say his own answer, which is that you have other options? So, by stories, the pshat is in this time, 67, they were not coming to steal anything back that the Jews stole from them. Egypt didn't have any land in Palestine, right? When they were threatening, let's say they were threatening. They weren't, but let's say they were. Their threat was not to take back something that the Israelis stole from them. The Israelis never stole from the Egyptians. So, yeah. So that's why he didn't use that Tanya. So he says a different Tanya. He says, negotiate. All right, now, the Isa b'Gemara Psachim, Daf Kuf Yud Ches Amud Beis. Gemara says, Bizar Amim Kravos Yachpatzun. He scattered nations because they desired war. So, Mi Garam, the Gemara Darshans, Mi Garam Lahem L'Yisrael She'Yispazru Bein Umas Ha'olam, who caused Klal Yisrael to be spread among the nations, to be going to Galus, Kravos Shahayu Chafetzim Bohem, because they wanted war. What does this mean? So the Maharsha is going to say it refers to by Churban Bayis Rishon and Bayis Sheni. The Jews didn't agree to be peaceful under the Babylonians or the Romans. They insisted on fighting, and because they wanted fighting, that's why they ended up going into exile. Kasav Maharsha Zal b'Ferushay the Ilu Hishlimu Yisrael im Nebuchadnezzar b'Bayis Rishon. If they would have made peace with Nebuchadnezzar, they would have said, "Okay, we'll live under you. We'll be your servants." V'chein b'Churban Bayis Sheni Ilu Shamu Haprutzim v'Biryonim Shebi Yisrael. If the biryonim, the militant Jews in Bayis Sheni, would have listened to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Ulachachami, would have listened to the Chacham who said, that we should make peace with the Romans, with Titus, Lo hayu golim. They wouldn't have gone into exile. Kemafurish beperak hanizakin. It's explicit Gemara in Gittin Nun Zayin Amud Aleph. It says, or Nun Vav Amud Aleph. It says that that Aspasianus, the leader of the Romans, now Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai went to him. He said that he said, why didn't you come to me earlier? He said the biryonim didn't let me, and he gave a mashal of a chavis, a barrel full of honey, and there's a snake on it, and you want to get the honey out of the barrel, but you can't break it without killing the snake, I think, right? Or you want to kill the snake, the other way around. You want to kill the snake, and there's no way to kill the snake without breaking the barrel. So here all the biryonim were like a snake. They were like the enemies of Rome, and Rome had no choice but to destroy Yerushalayim in order to get rid of the enemies.
And you mentioned in your book, Victor Miller has the keg and the serpent.
Right,
exactly. Zakkai wasn't wrong for keeping silent, because he said now there's a snake around the whole land.
Right.
Worse than the snake.
Right. So that's the point, that the Churban Bayis Sheni, they didn't have to go to Galus. They could have accepted the Romans, and the Romans wouldn't have destroyed the Beis Mikdash. And he says, "Mevur Yoser b'Sefer Yosifun," and this is explained more in the book of Yosifun. The book of Yosifun, right? Well, Josephus was a person who fought in the war at the time of the Churban, and he wrote a book about it afterwards. And he wrote his book,
War of the Jews.
War of the Jews. So he wrote the book in Greek.
That's right.
Right, and then the book was translated into Latin, and then a Jew came, like 800 years later, or something, I don't know exactly when, but a long time afterwards, and translated the Latin into Hebrew, and called it Yosifun. So that's the Sefer Yosifun that we have today.
It's interesting, it was also translated into Armenian. Remember, I think I told you, 3 years ago, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, they had an exhibit on Armenia, and they had the first secular book translated into Armenian at Echmiatz. Was Josephus, the War of the Jews.
Wow, so there were Jews in Armenia who wanted to read it, or it was
There's
translated for Christians?
No, it was translated into Armenian. It wasn't Jews. They liked the book.
The point of the book was not for Jews, it was for Christians.
Yeah,
right?
to just like Jews rebelled against Rome, so Armenia should rebel against Persia.
Oh, I see. That's a good point. Okay, so there's a lot about this in Yosifun. Yosifun describes how.
You know if it was translated into Syriac?
Yeah, I don't know. In the book, Josephus himself claims that he wrote his book in Aramaic too, and sent it to the Jews. I don't know if it means Syriac or a different kind of Aramaic, but he sent it to Jews in
Jewish
Aramaic.
Aramaic?
Yeah, Jewish Aramaic. Because he wasn't a native speaker of Greek. His native language was Aramaic. But he learned Greek in order to converse with the Romans. Anyway, so he describes how he stood outside the wall of Yerushalayim and he announced to everybody that they should make peace with the Romans. Because he was already defected to the Roman side. He gave in, he surrendered to them. So he says, here, look at this one. Perek Pei Daled. Be'ez hahi tziva Titus es amoy laster mi'al choyma el michutz to'ir. Titus commanded his army to go away from the area around the wall of the city. Ula hashbis es ha-milchama, to take a break from the war. Yami lachadim, for a few days. Laman yikra bi'aznei ha-Yehudim shalom, in order to call out for peace to the Jews inside the city. Kiyamar, because he said, Ulai yisu birtzoinam oil haromim. Maybe they'll willingly accept the yoke of Rome. V'yiyu v'yichyu v'lo yamusu, and then they'll live and they won't die. Ki chamal Titus al ha'ir v'al heichal Hashem, because Titus had mercy on the city and on the Beis Mikdash v'alam Hashem. So one of the things about Josephus you have to take with a grain of salt, because he was writing this in the palace of Titus, he didn't have the right to write bad stuff about Titus. So he made Titus look like a tzaddik. He said Titus really didn't want to destroy the Beis Mikdash or the city. He just wanted to rule over them. Yeah. Anyway, Levilti hashchis hakol. He didn't want to destroy it all. So he stopped the war. He took a ceasefire for 5 days. On the 5th day, he came to the gates of the city. And when he came, Shimon Sar Hapritzim, Shimon, the leader of the uprising, the biryonim, and Yochanan also, Archu Klei Streifa Listreif Boesh L'chol Klei Amashchisim She'asu Aromim. They prepared like a fire to burn down all the Romans' fortifications around the city. or whatever it's called, the thing that they build in order to get over the wall, the ramps or the battering ram, whatever. Yeah. Sha'asir Amim vayivadu kulam yachad. They all got together lilachim belev echad kegiborim, to fight like heroes against the Romans. V'kirois Titus es haYehudim ki mastru nafsham lamoed ulischazek. When Titus saw how the Jews were risking their lives, v'lamus kulam, to risk their, to die, they were ready to die. B'milchama ki vachru mavis mechaim. They chose death over life. Oz heichel adaber bi'ozneim divrei shalom. Titus began to speak peacefully to the Jews. V'divrei teichacha, and he rebuked them. Ulischanein al kashi arpam, and he pleaded with them, don't be so stubborn. Vayomer aleim Titus kadvar moela. He said these things to them. Lemor hinei lachadti shtei achoimus. There were 3 walls of Yerushalayim. Right, there was the innermost one, and then there was the next one that was built by the Chashmonaim, and there was a 3rd wall built by Agrippus, not too long before the Churban. So he says, I already took 2 walls. You only have 1 wall left. Levad. Umatasu aniyim b'hakshoischem. Why, you poor people, why are you being so stubborn? Es arpechem. I'm going to conquer the 3rd wall too. I'll destroy the whole city. And you're going to die. I'm going to destroy the temple of Hashem your God. Don't you have mercy on your own lives and your own wives' lives? Your sons and daughters. But he says the Jews didn't listen to the voice of Titus. Ki hikshu es arpam, because they were very stubborn. Vayishlach Titus es Yosef aleim. So Titus sent Yosef, which means Josephus, to speak to them. V'daber bi'ozneim divrei shalom v'divrei teichacha v'divrei chemla, to speak rebuke and mercy. Uliyatzam eitzos tovos, to give them a good counsel. Laman yimaltu, so they should save their lives. Vayidaber b'lahem b'lashon ivris. So Josephus spoke to them and says lashon ivris, Hebrew. I don't know if it means Hebrew because they didn't speak Hebrew in those days. It means Aramaic, I think. So he spoke to them in Aramaic. Laman ya'aminu, so they should believe. V'yivtechu, and they should rely on him. Vayelech Yosef aleim vayamoid noichach shara choima. Yosef stood in front of the gate of the wall. Ki yarei likroy v'lachoima. He was afraid to go too close to the wall. Ki yada Yosef, because Yosef knew asher hu nisav be'enei oam, that the people hated him. Al asher nasa ol aramim vayechid, because he went and surrendered to the Romans.
Josephus
knew that, yeah. So he knew.
So was he good?
He knew. Well, he didn't want to fight the war, and Chazal were against the war too. So
he was good.
Yes, he was good. Yeah. I don't know if what he did before that was good. But you saw that he fought for the first half of the war with the biryonim. He was on their side originally, and he killed Jews. And in his surrender, he played a trick. The famous story of the trick that he played. Yeah. The Romans surrounded their cave where they were hiding out. So Josephus, they all wanted to commit suicide, and he didn't want to. So he convinced them. He said, "Let's go and surrender to the Romans." And they said, "No, let's commit suicide." So they outvoted him. So he said, "Okay, we're going to commit suicide. So everyone we'll make a lottery, and everyone will kill the one next to him and whatever." So he arranged the lottery so that he should be left alive at the end, and then he and the other Jew who was left went and surrendered. So yeah, he wasn't that greatest guy, but
he did the Shuba like Chavona. I mean, like Yochanan ben Zakai's nephew was also, he was a biryonim, but he was a sticker good.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, Vayikra Yosef HaKohen v'kol gadol. Yosef HaKohen announced in a high voice, Noicha Chashar Lemor Shimu Elai. Listen to me. Kol advarim asher adaber bi'oznechem. All the things I'm going to speak to you, HaYehudim, you Jews, asher yetiv lachem. It's going to be good for you. Vayatu ha'am es his name. The people listened. Lishmoy el Yosef. Vayan vayidaber Yosef el ha'am lemor. And he spoke to the people saying, Noah ha'yalachem mitchila li'ilachim ka'asher atem nilchamim. It was a nice idea to fight this war, he says. Ka'asher atem nilchamim ata b'terem tavoy hara hazois b'yois arechem oimdois. Before all this happened, when you were ahead in the war, your cities were standing, and your land was full of people. Before all the heroes of the war were killed. Because now the different groups of the biryonim were pitted against each other, and they were killing each other too. Ad asher nishartem misay mispar. Now you guys are left very few. Melayasem es mikdash Hashem, and you're hiding out in the temple. V'yasei midmei chalalim. From the or you filled. No, he says you filled the whole temple with the blood of the wounded and killed people. Pigrei milchama, dead bodies. Bi'am atzum, v'yaz ponim, asher mashlu b'chol hagoyim. These people who are an am atzum, meaning the Romans, and they're powerful people, and they've conquered the whole civilized world. V'lachdu es kol ha'aratzos, v'yardu b'chol ha'umos, and they ruled over all the peoples. V'gam b'goyim asher radu b'chem milifnim heim ha'moishlim. They have the old countries that they conquered too. V'kulam avadim lahem. All the people are slaves to the Romans. V'yatem nilchamim imam, but you want to fight a war against them. Be'ivelis, like foolishly. V'loi b'chachma. Uvebina, not with understanding. V'loi tachmlu alo irazois. Don't you have mercy on the city? V'al heichel Hashem, v'al mikdashi, v'al nashosechem. Don't you have mercy in your lives? Amnam nesastem levavchem lehiskaro simon. But instead you're fighting with them, you're provoking them. Oy milchama laman harich ra b'am Hashem, to make more evil happen to the people of Hashem. And he says, "V'al heichel hakodesh ani yareh." I'm afraid about the base of Mikdash, penny notate, that it might be destroyed. V'al ira gedola agur, and I'm afraid about this big city, pen tahares, it might be destroyed. V'al Mikdash Hashem oichil. I'm begging you about the Mikdash, pen yishamim might become destroyed. V'al oilos v'al zvachim, all the korbanos that are brought. Ira, I'm afraid, pen yishavsu, they might get stopped, be used to, and they'll be taken away. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It goes on for pages and pages and pages. This is just one page, but his speech is like it's an incredible speech. Anyway, so the Rebbe says, you see, in the Bayis Sheni we have edus from Josephus that they could have given in, they could have lived, they didn't have to fight the war. They only wanted fighting and not peace. Ad kan l'shon ha'Maharsha Zal. That's the Maharsha. I'm not sure if this is Maharsha quote Josephun or that's the Rebbe's own edition. You have to look up the Maharsha and see if he himself quotes it. Anyway, v'harei b'churban bayis rishon v'sheni loy bo'u ha'oivim al iskei tevin v'kash. He says now, what?
Kash v'tevin.
Kash v'tevin. Sorry. That the Zionists want to claim, oh yeah, our wars are necessary because the Goyim are coming, the Egyptians are coming, they're going to come steal and whatever, right? He says, but you should have found a negotiation, you should have found a way out, right? In the time of Churban Bayis Rishon V'Sheni, Nebuchadnezzar and Titus were not just coming to steal. El Tsaru Alo Ir, they were coming to surround the city, to besiege the city. V'Sachru Mayonos Hamayim, they cut off the water supply to the city. Outside there was the sword, people were being killed. Inside there was fear, starvation, right? People in the city were starving to death. They had a fear of death and destruction. So you would think, if the Zionist argument is correct, you should say, okay, they're coming to kill, we got to go out and kill them. No, you see, not like that. You see, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and the Chachamim said, no, don't go to war. Bishvil Atzal is kash v'tevin, to go save the straw. Even to save lives. Ela hichriya, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, V'danu b'das Torah mitis, they paskin with their true das Torah, shaloi la'aruch milchama itam, not to fight a war against them. She'ein bozeh hatzal kol, because they said there's no saving lives that's going to happen through this war. V'loi dai shaloi yatzilu, it's not only not going to save lives, ela oid yachnisu es kol Yisrael es sakanas mavis v'galus, it's going to cause death and danger and exile for all the Jews. But the biryonim, the zealots who fought the war, didn't listen to the Chachamim. And now think about this 67 more in comparison to that. Elu haroitzim lahamis. These people who wanna load up, they wanna like push in, force in. B'divrei hapoiskim v'das Torah seinu hakdosha. They want to push in and say, oh yeah, the poiskim and the Torah all hold she'achiv lo tzeish l'milchama, that they have to go out and fight this 6-day war. B'chol oifen, no matter what, ulahafkir nafshos Yisrael, and to risk Jewish lives. V'loy lavater al kama and yonim, and not to give in on certain rights that the Egyptians wanted to take away from them. Water, rights to the water, and to try to find other ways to solve the problem, like the U.S. was willing, the other nations were willing to try to negotiate over the water. In order to save Jewish lives, to prevent war. He says, if you say what the Zionists say, that it was right to fight the war, and it was not right to negotiate, then Nimtza L'Daita Manichzava comes out according to their wrong opinion. Shechas v'shalom Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Asta Shalei Kadin. That Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the one who was wrong. Biryonim Heima Shekivnu L'Das Torah Amiti. It's only the biryonim, the zealots, in the second temple. They were the ones who had the Das Torah. V'al Kalpanim, and that's, by the way, the Zionists hold of that. They hold that the zealots were right. They named themselves after the zealots. You know? Yeah,
there's organs called Bris Biryonim.
Right.
It's like the Irgun, the Pika.
Right.
And Jabotinsky could call them my boys. The Brit Biryonim.
They supported Hitler.
And even Ben Gurion named himself that because of, I think that he named himself after Yosef Ben Gurion. This one, it's interesting because Yosef Ben Gurion was the one. Yosifun, by the way, Yosef's father was named Matisyahu in the original Sefer. In the Hebrew Sefer, it changes it, that his father was named Gurion. So Jews in all the generations called him Yosef Ben Gurion. And I think that Ben Gurion named himself after this name. I don't know. Anyway, point is, but it's ironic because this Yosef Ben Gurion was giving in to the war. He wasn't fighting. Anyway, so Al Kapanim Zeb Baruch Ki Al Pi HaTorah I Efshar Shetimaster LaPoishim V'Koifrim. According to Torah, it can't be given. Even if you're not going to agree with me about. Yeah, but he was tzaddik. He wasn't a general in the war. Anyway, so it's clear, even if you don't agree about this point about negotiating versus fighting, but it's clear that al pi das Torah, you can't give the decision into the hands of these sinners and the heretics, muvkarim, and people who are irresponsible. To decide on a matter that involves lives, and danger to the Jewish people. Fighting such a war or letting the Zionists decide on the war is not saving lives, it's murder. And someone who supports them, he's handing Jewish people into the hands of people who are heretics and irresponsible people. So therefore, nobody should say such a thing. It should be forgotten. Nobody should think that any poskim ever said this. Nobody would think of this. So we're still in Mem Zayin, at the end of Mem Zayin, and we spoke about how the Rebbe's Shita is that when it says in Shulchan Aruch Siman Shin Chav Tes, it says in Archaim that if Goyim are surrounding a Jewish city and they're either attacking or they're about to attack, you're allowed to go out on Shabbos and fight against them, and Kol Shekin on a weekday. And the Zionists use this, of course, as a source, proof text, to show that they should go to war in 67, because they held that the Arabs were about to attack them, which the Rebbe held is not true. But even if they were, he says that you're supposed to negotiate if that's possible. And that's what he says at the beginning of the Simon. The haGuela al Adas. Is it even thinkable? If there's a way to work to save Jewish lives, in any way, any kind of idea, which is not war, and to save Jews from being killed, because any war, even if they succeed in the war, Jews are still going to be killed. No poisik would be matir to go to war in that case. When we kol sheken l'chayav oisah, no one would, for sure, certainly no one would obligate Jews to go to war. So, in the Hemshech, he brought a raya from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. In the case of the Roman war against the Jews in the time of the Second Temple, where Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the one who said, let's go and make peace with the Romans, and they'll leave the temple standing, they'll leave the city standing, and leave us in our land. And he said the biryonim, those were the Zionists of the time. Those are the ones who held, no, let's fight to the end, we don't care. And we see the Das Torah is not like them. So there's a person named Rebbe Abraham Weiss who writes articles in Hamachna Haredi, and he's quoted here in the Sefer called Das HaPoskim al Shvuas HaGolus. Deus HaPoskim al Shvuas HaGolus, the opinions of the Poskim regarding the oaths of Golus, written by Rabbi Yonason Paz. And in the footnotes, or actually the end notes, he has pieces that his Rebbe, Rebbe Abraham Weiss, critiqued his Sefer, or added to his Sefer. So, I'll give you a copy of it right here, of the page. He says like this, we're like 5 lines from the end of the big paragraph here on this page. Ula etzem hakushya, going back to the actual question, how is it allowed to fight a war against the nations who are surrounding us, surrounding Jews, meaning in light of the Shalosh Shvuos? How are you allowed to fight this war? So Kvar Ramaz the Kushizu Bala Vayol Moshe, the author of the Satmar Rebbe, who's the author of Vayol Moshe, refers to this question Bi'al Agula V'al Tmur Siman Mem Zayin, which is the siman we just learned. V'loy tiretz shum teretz al zeh, and he doesn't answer the question. Ela shekosav. Now, just to stop him right here, he doesn't answer the question. The Rebbe held there is no need for an answer because it's true that bisman zeh, just like on an individual scale, if someone attacks a Jew in the street, he's allowed to fight back. And haGuela lahargoy hashkim lahargoy, right? haGuela lahargoy hashkim lahargoy. Then is you're allowed to kill in self-defense. So the same thing on a larger scale. If you have a city of Jews that's surrounded by an enemy about to attack them, yeah, they're allowed to fight back. That's not a problem of the Shalosh Shvuos, because the Shalosh Shvuos doesn't apply when you're not doing it as a rebellion. And you're not doing it as an effort to gain your own independence. You're just doing it to defend yourself. That's a fair shadin in Or Chaim. So the fact that the Rebbe doesn't answer a teretz, that's not really accurate. He answers, meaning by implication, he agrees that the din applies, except that he says that it doesn't apply to 67 more because it was possible to negotiate. But if it's not possible to negotiate, if the Goyim are just coming, like the Nazis are just coming, they're not offering any terms of surrender, they just want to kill every Jew, yeah, of course, get up and fight against them. Okay, Ella. Let's continue now. Shekosav, the Rebbe writes, Shanhagas Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai b'mei churban loy haisakach. He argues that the behavior of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai during the destruction of the temple was not that way. He didn't go out to fight. Ella hadif li'ikana l'goyim, but rather he preferred to surrender. V'zeh loy mataretz masha b'shulchan aruch poistik la'alacha shekein mutar lilachim. So he says, I have a problem with the Rebbe. The Rebbe says that it's better to surrender, so why does the Shulchan Aruch say it's better to fight? Just a second. Yeah, so he's asking, why is the Shulchan Aruch paskin that it's mutter to fight this war if the Rebbe says that you're supposed to negotiate? Well, obviously the answer is, the Rebbe knew that the Shulchan Aruch paskins that, but he's saying that the Shulchan Aruch is talking in a case when you can't negotiate, right? He's saying the Shulchan Aruch is talking if the Goyim are coming to either kill or steal, if it's a city by the border, you're allowed to fight against them on Shabbos and Kol Shekem weekdays, and they're not offering any other terms of surrender. They're not saying, oh yeah, if you come out and do something for us, then we'll go away. They're coming to fight. They're going to take over your city. The two options are fight or let them take over your city. Even if they're going to come to steal, the option is, okay, let them come and take over your city and then have a foothold in the land to go take over more cities and kill more Jews later. So that's when the Shulchan Aruch says to fight. Shenkin the Rebbe is saying, let's say you can negotiate with them and they'll go away. You'll give them something. You'll pay them taxes, or you'll agree to some peace treaty with them that they want. Give them some rights to water. The Egyptians wanted rights to the water. I don't know exactly what they wanted, but there must have been something they wanted when they closed off the straits to Israel. So, if you go out and you ask them, what do you want? What can we do for you? Let's sit down, the United States, the United Nations, let's sit down and figure out how to solve this problem. Then, the Rebbe holds you don't fight. And that's not against the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, let's continue now. Ma gam shehasiba she'Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai loy ratza lilachem mefurish b'Rashi begitten. That the reason why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai decided not to fight is explained by Rashi in Gittin. Daf Nun Vav Amud Aleph Dibur Mas V'Lo Mis Tayim Milsa. That what happened is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to the zealots, the biryonim, he said, let's make peace, and they said no, let's make war. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said no, Lo Mis Tayim Milsa, which Rashi says Linat Seach, one word. Rashi says it means to win, meaning he's saying to the zealots, you're not going to win the war. Because he knew that they wouldn't win the war. Not because of the shvuos. So let's ignore the thing about shvuos, because I explained already the Rebbe holds shvuos don't affect this halacha of shin chav tes. This thing in Shulchan Aruch that says to fight a war even on Shabbos, nothing to do with the shvuos. But his real point is, you see that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai didn't want to fight. Why? Because he knew they were going to lose. But if they would win, then he would choose fighting over negotiation. Oh, so now he's got the Rebbe, right? Rebbe's trying to prove from here, from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that you're supposed to surrender or negotiate. You see, no. You see, that's because they were going to lose. But if they would have won, or if Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai would have seen that they have a chance of winning, then he would have said, go fight. Oh, so what's the answer? So I think the answer is like this. The Rebbe would explain like this. There are two types of war. There's war that took place in the time of the temple, which is called a milchemes reshus, a war that's voluntary. And it says in Sim Mem Vav, he brings the Noda Yehuda that they have to ask the Sanhedrin first. They have to ask the Sanhedrin. They can't go to war without the Sanhedrin of 71 sages paskening that you should do it.
This is from a Rav?
What? This is I explained what it is. There are two types of war. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, there was something called milchemes hareshus, a voluntary war, when Jews go to war to fight a nation nearby for whatever reason, and they ask permission from the Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin paskins, yes, go to war, and then they can go to war. The king can lead the war and go out, start a war. And then there's this thing that we're talking about in Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim Shin Chav Tes, where it says even during exile, if the Jews are surrounded by an army and they're being threatened, they go out and fight, even on Shabbos. So what's the difference between these two things? This second thing doesn't need a Sanhedrin, obviously. This is basically a large-scale idea of defense, right? Self-defense. If someone's coming to get you, you get them first. So I'm trying to explain like this. The Satmar Rebbe held that during the Beis Hamikdash times, it was still in the first category. Milchemes hareshus. They had a Sanhedrin. They had Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He was the head of the Sanhedrin. And if he had looked at the situation and decided that the Jews were going to win, he might have said, yes, go to war. He might have said yes. He might have said that they should go and fight the Romans. But as it happened, he saw that they were going to lose, right? And Rashi says on the Gemara that says Lo Mis Tayim Milsa, Rashi says that means Linat Seach, that they're not going to win the war. But if they would win the war, yeah, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had the right, as the head of the Sanhedrin, to paskin that they should go to war. That's all during the Beis Hamikdash times. But Bizman Hazeh, we're not working with that din anymore. We're working with the din of Shulchan Aruch Shin Chav Tes. The din of Shulchan Aruch Shin Chav Tes is a strictly defensive measure. If you're going to get killed, last resort, go and fight. But let's say the enemy has terms of negotiation that they want. They want certain things out of you. They want you to cede a piece of land, let's say. Not a city, like let's say they want you to cede the Sinai, a place where you have no cities. Or, okay, that the Israelis didn't control that then, but let's say they want you to cede rights to a body of water. right now there's a whole thing with Lebanon over the gas fields in the ocean. There's certain things. It's not a question of stealing. It's a question more of that they have they have certain arguments that they want, certain things they want out of the Israelis. So there the Rebbe is arguing that you should negotiate, because this din is not the same as Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So basically that finishes up Mem Zayin, that we were talking about how the Rebbe would answer. Now I just want to say, I think it's still Starachiyun. The Rebbe's raya now is not going to be such a raya anymore. He says in the last paragraph here of Mem Zayin, he argues that the biryonim wanted to fight and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai wanted to surrender. And today's Zionists that want to fight, they're like the biryonim. They're not following Das Torah. But the truth is that there they were going to lose, right? There they were surrounded by the Romans. They were basically fought back the whole Eretz Yisrael. They were the only thing that was left that the Zealots had control of was Jerusalem, right? And not even the whole Jerusalem, only part of it. So they basically had no chance of winning. That's what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said. We don't have any chance of winning. So you can't bring a raya from there that the Zionists today are like the biryonim, because the Zionists today will say, you know what, the biryonim were wrong for fighting to the death. We don't hold the fighting to the death. Like it's the normal Zionists. Maybe some of the crazy ones do, but the normal ones will say, we don't want to fight to the death.
How about Samson?
We're going to win.
Samson.
Yeah, okay, I know. There are some people that are like that. It's true.
I know, that's the official Golden position.
Golden Mayer once said, we'll fight to the last man.
Huh?
There's a quote.
The Samson option.
Yeah, right.
They're going to blow them nuclear.
Yeah, I know. So they're crazy ones who say that, but I'm saying the Rebbe is referring to the same ones who wanted to start the '67 war. They're bad, but they're sane at least. They don't want to start something that they're going to lose, and they knew full well they were going to win, right? So you know what I mean. So those ones, you can't compare them to the biryonim, because the biryonim were in a losing battle and they still wanted to go to war. They held it was more noble to die fighting the Romans than to just surrender to the Romans. All right.
You're like Joseph